Hello and welcome to WordPress Marketing Podcast, the podcast which teaches you how to reach the top of the WordPress business ladder from those who have already climbed it. I'm Joe Lobo. Today I'm joined by Chief Marketing Officer at Kinsta, Brian Jackson. Brian's the brains behind the Kinsta blog, which is one of the most successful WordPress blogs out there. He told me how he planned the blog, how he promoted it, and how he used it to increase Kinsta's conversions. So here I am with Brian Jackson from Kinsta, the Chief Marketing Officer of Kinsta and one of the brains behind the Kinsta blog. Brian, thanks for joining us on WordPress Marketing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And you said you're calling in from Arizona, where you were saying it's pretty warm there at the moment.
It is, yeah. It's today it'll be 110 degrees, and that's like 43 degrees Celsius for everyone over there. So yeah, it's definitely pretty hot. You can't go outside.
I'm from London, so we kind of say about us Brits that we always find a way to complain. So normally we complain about how it's too cold and raining all the time in London. But, so for me personally, I can see myself being there in Arizona and complaining about how it's too hot as well. So you can never win. I imagine it's a flip-flop and shorts life for you out there in Arizona.
It is, yeah, all year round. So I can't complain though. I moved here on purpose, so I love it, and I will. California is just way too expensive. Arizona is a good spot if you want like sunshine and good cost of living, basically.
And while you're in Arizona, obviously, Brian, you've been at Kinsta for the last few years and working on the blogging and the marketing side of the company, and it's clearly, you've become one of the most successful blogs for WordPress out there. What I was interested to ask you is when you first joined, I think in 2016, if I'm correct, what was your immediate approach to growing the brand? Like, did you have a sort of list of things you wanted to achieve? How did you approach it?
So I kind of did going in. I've always done kind of SEO on the side, and I run another blog, Workup, is kind of like my own little personal marketing blog. Before Kinsta, I was at KeyCDN, which is a content delivery network. There, I did pretty much writing 99% of the time, and we had kind of seen a strategy that really worked. Like as far as if you push out really good content, like people will come and you'll start getting rankings, and like SEO's definitely not dead by any means, even though some people will say if you Google it, you'll get different opinions on that. But it worked really well for us at KeyCDN, and then it has for my personal stuff too. So, going into Kinsta, they hired me kind of for that reason, because they knew content marketing works, but they didn't have, the manpower or anyone to do it. And so when they brought me on, I was, writing, a good portion of the time. I don't write as much as I used to, because my positions have kind of changed as the company has grown. Now I'm kind of managing a little bit more than I used to be, in there writing every day, although I do a lot of writing still. Yeah, that was kind of the goal, just, push out as much quality content as possible. That was the main goal.
So when you say quality content, how did you identify what was quality content and what might not be so relevant for the audience you're targeting?
We kind of look at two things, really. We look at kind of the content length, and I've just seen it like, a million times happen. Like the content length, just, it matters a lot still. And the unfortunate thing is the more people that realize that means it matters even more nowadays, because, more important people have learned that, oh, wow, Google likes, lots of content. So, now you're having to write even more than you did like 2 years ago, which is kind of scary, because at some point, where does it stop? Like you can't just write 30,000 words, and at some point it becomes ridiculous almost to a point. But content length is important, and then thinking of your audience is the one thing as well too. Like not just writing any old topic. Like you want to think about what will actually convert. Like on your site, you don't want to just post some random topic just to get traffic that's not going to convert, because that's just a waste of time. So thinking of your audience, what your product is, focusing on good quality content, and by that I mean a lot of that is content length.
So as a rule for Kinsta, do you have a limit on the number of words a post should be?
Not like we don't have like a hard limit set, but I don't think we really publish anything under 3,000 words. That's just kind of a rough estimate. But we'll go up into the 20,000 words sometimes. Like the blog post I wrote about SEO, like it's an SEO checklist kind of a thing. I think that's like 29,000 words. So, that's a huge blog post. Probably should turn that into a book or something now. So there really is no stop for us. And the thing is, we'll keep adding and improving content. So, even if we write a 3,000 word post, a year from now, it'll probably end up being a 5,000 word post because we'll see things we missed. We'll get feedback from comments on the blog about it. So we'll keep going back and adding stuff to the post after the fact too.
How important is it to update posts, even posts that are reaching the top of Google? Do you make it a policy to go back every few months and update it?
That I would say is almost just as important as publishing new content nowadays. And to be honest, I don't write as much new content nowadays just because my tasks have changed, but I do spend a lot of time updating content. And a lot of that is primarily because I live in the world so much that I know, since we do premium WordPress hosting, I see tickets with our customers. I see all these different conversations happening. And so I'll know off the top of my head of like, oh, I know we have an article on this and I see someone was just having a ticket about this with a problem. So I actually go find the article and update it with however we resolved, the ticket for our customer. Things like that. If you have a product or tool where you can interact with the support tickets or something, it's a really great way to get extra feedback or content ideas to keep improving stuff that you have. So just because I work with our customers so closely, I use that as a great way to update our current content.
You were talking about how you come up with topic ideas and you make sure they are as relevant to your audience as possible. How do you find out what topics are relevant to the audience? Is it a case of researching other blogs or just speaking to your customers?
Yeah, so this is one area we've never had a problem with. And I'll tell you a few things we do. Tom, our CFO, kind of did the marketing before I came on. And that was back in he was doing it in 2015 and I came on in 2016 to Kinsta. Ever since then, he loves kind of the even though he does a lot of billing and, financial and stuff, he loves the marketing stuff. And so he's helped me. He's been in Trello daily, helping me ever since I joined Kinsta, just because he loves it and he has ideas. And so we've kind of tag team things ever since. And so our Trello board has always had I think minimum of 500 ideas, not even joking, probably even more than that. It's ridiculous. But the ways we get ideas is, first of all, user feedback. Sometimes we just have people asking that we'd write about posts. Second thing is support tickets. We see people having problems. If we don't have a blog post about it, we'll just write one because, if it solves a problem, it actually helps our support team. If it comes up in a ticket later, they can just be like, hey, we have a super in-depth guide about doing this and our customers love, when they can just follow a step-by-step thing instead of, having to go back and forth with our support team. So tickets, competition is something we definitely look at too. And for that, I just recommend, look at who's ranking for stuff that you want to rank for, compile your own list of your own competitors. And I have a little trick in Slack. I subscribe to a little RSS feed in Slack. I have my own little channel that I see all my competitors and what they're posting every day. And so I'll kind of check that just once a day to see oh, hey, we don't have anything about this yet. It's kind of a quick, easy way to see what they're doing without having to go, browse their site every single day. If you're in your content enough, you should know, off the top of your head, we already have something on this, what to ignore and what to make a note of, kind of a thing. And then the other way is to solve your own problems on a daily basis. So, I use WordPress. I have my own side business outside of Kinsta. I am constantly, troubleshooting things just like everybody else is with WordPress, trying to fix problems, as WordPress continues to grow with Gutenberg and all these other changes, you have to figure things out for yourself. And so stuff like that, I use for new blog post ideas. How did I solve this problem? People love to read tutorials and Google, loves tutorials for some reason too. They just seem to rank really high. Another thing that ranks really well is list posts, which I hate that those work really well just because I hate seeing top 10 posts. I just hate it, but they work really well. People seem to love them. So, I think the people that hate them are a small portion portion of the audience that, maybe don't share them, but the broad audience love list posts and they do share them, and Google seems to love them. So I do recommend, looking at list posts, whatever your niche product or competition is, they do seem to work really well. So those are the kind of ways we get topic ideas.
So once you have a topic idea, such as I'm just looking on the blog now, and you have articles about outbound marketing or how to fix the 4 or 5 method not allowed to error on your WordPress site, for example, and a few others, what's the thought process to optimizing it for SEO or for Google? Do you have a checklist in mind to make sure that it's considered worthy for Google's ranking?
Yeah, and one thing what you just mentioned too, I'd want to warn people too about is the topic on outbound marketing. The other one you mentioned is the error about a WordPress site. In those, I view those as two different things. Like the WordPress one is very focused for errors that, our users and people that would sign up for our service are getting. The outbound marketing one, is obviously a very broad demographic of anyone in the marketing space. And I would say anyone just starting out, don't do the broad topics like that. Like focus, like we do WordPress. So like for the first year or two when I came at Kinsta, like we focus primarily on just WordPress articles until we got to the point where, we could expand into, other ideas like outbound marketing. Like we realized, hey, we have small business owners, lots of small business owners as customers at Kinsta. So why not share other things like outbound marketing? Because those are also potential customers. The thing is, it's so broad that you're not going to be targeted as much as, like writing specifically WordPress. So if you're just starting out, I say, write as close as you can to your niche as possible until you have a really good, until your traffic is decent, until you have a good base for your content. Then you can start reaching out into maybe broader ideas.
So just quickly on that, Brian, how specific were you? Did you just exclusively write about WordPress hosting or about WordPress more broadly when you started out?
It was pretty focused. Like we were doing like how to optimize your images, for speed, how to decrease your time to first byte, which are all very WordPress hosting specific things because they're all like performance related, or like how to manage multiple sites with a WordPress dashboard tool, everything kind of related back to someone that we wanted to sign up as a customer, at that very day if they would hit the article. And yeah, again, I think it worked really well for us. And those are something that I kind of look at. Yoast has a term, they kind of call them like pillar posts, term in their tool that I kind of like because that's kind of how I view them too. So like even now, I kind of view those still as like our pillar posts. And we always go back and make sure those are updated because those are kind of what got us to where we are today. And then the broader articles are kind of just to, reach more people that we wouldn't have gotten before. Maybe someone doesn't know what time to first byte is. So, we would never reach that person because it's too technical for them basically. But maybe they're, Googling stuff, how to do outbound marketing for their business. And they stumble across our site and say, hey, wow, these guys look like they're doing really cool stuff with hosting. And maybe I don't like my hosting at the moment. So, that ends up coming back later and maybe they become a customer later down the road. But as far as the checklist goes, I do have a massive post on this on our site. So like encourage people to go check that out. But, little things that I'm very OCD, I guess you could say, about SEO. And I look at it as a very technical approach. So, little things just as far as like naming your images appropriately and optimizing your images so that, I try to keep everything under 100 kilobytes, every image. That's kind of just a rule of thumb for me, just to make sure your post is going to load fast. Like you don't want it loading slow. Even doing things like lazy loading your images. But then, doing keyword research is really important. I think we still do keyword research for every single post, even though we still try to write smart about it. So like the term I always use was write smarter, not harder. So like you can still write for the user and still do keyword research. Like you don't have to just do one or the other. So like you don't want to focus just on the keyword specifically. Otherwise it's going to come off as, spammy or way too keyword focused. So, pick a keyword or topic or even long tail keywords like synonyms of that keyword and then start writing about the topic. And so that's kind of the approach we take for that. But even things like naming the slug or the permalink, of the article, like, using the keyword for that and keeping it short, permalink, all these little technical things that, people might not think is important, like they are important. I recommend people, if you haven't paid attention to these things, like just Google SEO checklist or something, you'll find tons of posts on, all these little OCD things that all these SEO people are doing that are actually important. And that's one of the reasons reasons why their stuff outranks other people is because they do pay attention to those little things. The nice thing is if you get used to doing them, it's not really that annoying because it becomes just another kind of your part of your content creation process, and you can still focus on the content, and then that just becomes part of another kind of your steps.
You mentioned keyword research. How do you approach that specifically? Do you identify the most popular terms, or is it a combination of that and also terms that might not be as competitive?
We kind of do three things. So the first would be if we come up with a topic idea, we say something like maybe our competitor wrote about, and we're like, hey, that seems like a good idea. We don't have it yet. Before just putting that in our Trello board because it's something we don't have, we first go and take that and see like, is there, a keyword or keyword variations that have search volume for this topic? And we use the tool Ahrefs, which we love. I use it. That's a tool that never closes in my browser. Like I have it up daily. It's expensive, to be honest, especially if you're someone solo, but there are other tools like I think KW Finder is a great cheap one that's kind of been getting popular. I use that in the past too. That's a great one. But yeah, taking the topic keyword idea and seeing how much search volume is actually out there. If there's like 20 searches a month, it's probably not worth it. And, we do write things once in a while that don't have any volume, like specific things. Like maybe we're doing a feature update about a new thing at Kinsta. There's not going to be search volume because it's something specific to our business. So we'll still write about it. But if we're doing broader articles, like we always try to make sure there's some volume. Otherwise, nobody's going to see it really, to be honest, unless you're focused primarily on social media marketing, which that might be a good approach for you, but I'm not a good social media marketer. I mean, I don't think of myself as one. So I would never want to like put all my eggs in just that one basket. And so, yeah, looking to see if there's search volume, and then also seeing if it's something that your user demographic, if it would help them. So two things, like, is it something that maybe someone will come there, see it, say, hey, that was helpful. Who are these guys? And then convert to a customer later. Or is it something that could actually help your current customers? That's another thing. I think people forget about current customers sometimes. So like if there's search volume, also think about your current customers, because actually in the long run, it has saved our support team so much time just by, being able to pass them a link saying, hey, yeah, we have a huge guide about this. Here it is. And then they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so it helps us by saving us time, and they love it. So yeah, think of not just new users, but also your current users too. So yeah, there's search volume, new users, because obviously you want new users to possibly convert, and then current users is kind of the other thing we kind of look at.
When you're trying to target new users, I guess one of the dangers with the blog is you'll get a lot of traffic, but you'll have very few conversions. So how do you approach trying to ensure you maximize the number of conversions you get through the blog?
That is a really good question. And I'm glad you asked that, because that question is actually getting trickier now than it's actually a lot trickier now than it used to be when I joined Kinsta, because of a couple reasons. First of all, we have the GDPR thing, which happened, where you now have these, cookie things that you have to accept. And the bad thing about that is if you do GDPR the correct way in Europe, a lot of the scripts are not supposed to run until they hit accept. Some sites just still have the accept cookie or not, and it doesn't actually do anything behind the scenes, which is technically actually illegal, which is scary because I look at millions of sites that are doing it the wrong way still. But if you want a good example, look at Kinsta. If you're in Europe, I think we built ours ourselves. We didn't do a plugin. And I think we did a really good example of how to do it the right way. But we also spend a lot of time on it too. But yeah, so a lot of scripts don't run. So like an example is like the Facebook pixel. If you're tracking, conversions from Facebook with an article that maybe you're promoting on Facebook, a lot of people don't click that accept cookie thing. They just keep reading, keep clicking through your site, and they leave that little bar down there at the bottom and they never click it. If they don't do that, the Facebook pixel might not actually ever fire. And so if you're looking at conversions on the Facebook tool, like in Facebook Business Manager, you might not ever see a conversion on that side from that because of the GDPR thing, and they never click the accept thing. So because of that, there's a lot of data not flowing in both ways. Now you can still use UTM parameters and stuff, to get it to flow into Google Analytics and stuff. So there's ways you can do that still, but there's a lot of data that is now missing because of GDPR. So I love, privacy and stuff, but I really hated GDPR just as a marketer because a lot of data is just gone like all of a sudden, and it sucks. because it makes my job a lot harder. The other thing is you have all these browsers that are so hyper focused on privacy. And again, I won't diss privacy. I'm all for, your data is your own data, but it makes my job so much harder. Like even I, though, kind of hypocrite because I use the Brave browser myself, just because ads have gotten to the point of being ridiculous and crashing my browser, which has way more RAM than it needs. And so, Brave is like a alternate Google Chrome browser that has a really awesome ad blocker and stuff, and runs super fast. But you have all these browsers now. Firefox 2 is doing it. Google Chrome just announced last week that they're going to launch a super hyper-focused ad blocker. The problem with that is they're blocking things like Google Analytics by default. So someone hits your site and Google Analytics is not even running. And that's a problem. Like the Brave browser blocks Google Analytics, which, what are you supposed to do as a marketer if you can't ever see that person come to your site and they convert, but you actually don't know it? So, at that point, you're having to almost rely on like Stripe data or your e-commerce data to see like, hey, we have a lot of people converting from, the United Kingdom. But if I look at Google Analytics, I only see like 40% of those people. You have to make decisions based on like a tiny fraction of the data. And I've talked to a lot of marketers about this problem, and some say they don't see 70% of their data nowadays, which is crazy. Like they're only seeing 30%. How are you supposed to make decisions on 30% of your data? It's scary. So what I've done is, I take the small portion of data I still do have left. I use, UTM parameters on everything I can to make sure everything goes into Google Analytics as possible. The landing page section in Google Analytics is probably the best section to see what content is converting, because if you have e-commerce set up in Google Analytics, it's not set up by default. But if you take the time to set that up, it'll actually show you the pass through all the way from when they first hit your site to if they bounced around 8 different times and then converted. You can see on the landing page section if it converted to a customer all the way down the pipeline. So that's actually really helpful to see like, hey, did this blog post on, how to speed up my WordPress site? Did this actually, how many people did this actually, or how much money did this convert to down the pipeline, kind of a thing. Again, I don't see as much data as I like. And so it's something too, I think marketers have to work with their CEOs and their bosses now too, because, a lot of bosses and CEOs will come. I've worked at agencies before Kinsta and they look at Google Analytics and they say, hey, why is my traffic down? And that's what the boss does. And so you have to, as a SEO, kind of explain, this is why. And it's tough to say, oh, it's because everyone's concerned about privacy. And so you're not even seeing all the data anymore. Thankfully, our CEO is kind of I don't know for a better term, but he's kind of a nerd too. So he keeps up with all these changes too. And he understands that, yeah, we're not seeing all the data that we used to, but I think it's important to communicate that with, if you have a boss or a CEO, and that's looking at the analytics data, communicate that data as well, the changes that are happening in this space. As a marketer, it's a lot harder nowadays than it was even 2 years ago.
I imagine there's a lot of people out there who will take Google Analytics at face value and will assume that that is the traffic they're receiving. So it's I think it'd be interesting to know the uncertainty that many blogs out there have, because as you said, you kind of have to make an assumption that this is only a X amount of the traffic that you're truly receiving each day.
Yeah. And another important part is it also depends on what industry you're in. So obviously people coming to Kinsta, they're, IT people, they're web developers. They're most likely the people that are running these ad blockers to begin with to block Google Analytics. So our industry is going to be one of the worst possible as far as seeing data. But if you're targeting real estate people, they probably don't even know what an ad blocker is. So they might still be running Microsoft Internet Explorer or something, or default Chrome, which don't have ad blockers and so you're going to see a lot more data just by default. I think it depends on what your industry is too. Ours is unfortunately one of the worst.
So in your experience, if you do identify certain pages or blogs which are converting well, have you seen a pattern for why those ones work as opposed to others?
Yeah, and I can tell you right off that our pillar posts that I mentioned earlier, the ones that are very specific to a niche, those are the ones that are converting the best. And that's why it's really important, I think, to write as much content as you can, super hyper focused on your niche first before you branch out. Because I've seen with the broader topics, like we'll get, random conversions here or there, which if you get enough broad topics, that's great because, here or there adds up to a lot if you have a lot of broad topics. But you don't want here or there when you're just first starting out. Like you want, 5 to 10 conversions a month, something from that article. Like that's a good result or something. And so, yeah, same hyper focus. I can tell you, it's just those are the ones that are going to convert more if you're just starting out. It's hard to say because it's different, for each industry or niche. But for ours, I've seen a lot that convert the well are hyper focused on performance. So it seems like for us, we're a premium WordPress host and we are super focused on high performance, where some of our competitors in the space aren't. We've noticed people come to us because they want faster websites. The content that converts really well for us are those pieces of content that are focused on speed. I think, find kind of like your bread and butter, what's good about your tool or what's better, different. Like for you guys, I think it's like multilingual, stuff for the one tool. So like obviously, focus on like, why do you do multilingual, better than, the other competition or something like, or maybe like a multilingual SEO, like would be a better topic for you guys rather than, just a broader SEO topic. Find like what your audience, I think is, and what your bread and butter is and why you're different. How do you take that to SEO and build articles around it, basically?
What's your approach regarding the article itself? Do you have a minimum number of call to actions you want to include, for example, or how much do you think about the links you include for each article?
Yeah, so that's something we've constantly been A/B testing. We have so much content, now that I don't even know how many words I've written in the past 2.5 years. Like I'm just tired thinking about it. But we're to the point now where, we're trying to A/B test and improve like on the current content, because if you've been writing, maybe you're not just starting out and you have content for like 3 years, like these little A/B tests can they can do overnight wonders if you can find something that works like on an article. We have like a call to action in the middle of our article. We have one at the bottom of our article. And then we actually have one that our developer just made, which is actually kind of cool. We have one that if there's 10 or more comments, then we actually have a CTA that appears in between the comments after 10 comments have appeared on the post. So basically it means like if you scroll down enough, another CTA shows up, but we don't have it show up if there's, no comments yet or something. Thinking of little things you can do like that to add CTAs without, spamming them is something I think a good approach. And then we also have like a sidebar that scrolls with you. We've seen that works really well. It's kind of annoying. I hate it. My boss hates it. We kind of all hate it at Kinsta, but it works. Unfortunately, we've tested this. We've tested a static one. We've tested like a little tiny one. We've tested nothing, leaving just like the middle CTA. And this scrolling one just works. Like I hate that it works, but it does. So it might not work for every niche or something, but like something, definitely A/B test for yourself and see, what little call to actions work. We use a free tool to test all this stuff. We use Google Optimize, which I keep finding a lot of people have never heard about this, which is funny because it's actually Google's own tool. And it's integrated with Google Analytics, which makes it super, super easy to test. Like you can just hook it up to your Google Analytics goal, like within one click, because it's already part of Google Analytics. So definitely look up Google Optimize if you haven't yet. Basically, you can change anything on a page and just test headlines, test buttons, test anything you want. It's awesome.
You touched upon earlier social media and the dangers of relying too much on that with your marketing approach. But I'm intrigued to know, like when you first started 3 years back, how much did you use social media to promote Kinsta and the blog as well?
It's still a pivotal part of our marketing approach, but it's definitely not something we rely on. But I mean, Tom and I, we live on Twitter. Like, I don't know, we love Twitter. I don't know, for WordPress space, it seems to work really, really well. Like WordPress people just seem to use Twitter over everything else more. And then there's WordPress Facebook groups seem to be popular in the WordPress space too. So I think you kind of have to find where your audience is. So, for WordPress, like I don't really see a lot of stuff on Pinterest happening or Instagram. There might be some that have figured out how to drive traffic from that niche. We have really good success with Twitter, even just organic Twitter, like just posting stuff. If you've, work on growing your following for a while and just posting random things about WordPress and stuff like works really well for us. And we get traffic that converts from Twitter and Facebook. So, and another thing we do is we do some ads with Facebook and Twitter with our content. Those do seem to work really well. our strategy is kind of when we publish a new post, if it's one that we think is really good, that we'll promote, I don't want to say boost because I hate it when people just go and click the boost button, because it's actually, you need to go create an ad with your content and actually like work on building your audience, like focus on fine tuning that stuff. If you just boost it and not care about it, you're like not going to see the best results. We do that. We don't do it on the broad content, I can tell you. Like we just do it on the posts that I know that are really super hyper focused about WordPress, because I know those are more likely to convert. So we don't want to really waste money on promoting broader topics. A little Facebook advertising and Twitter ads have worked really well for us. And then just growing our social following organically. And then, finding the social networks that work. I've been trying to figure out Pinterest, and I fail. I keep posting stuff that I don't know how it works, to be honest.
It doesn't seem to match with WordPress, really, does it?
It doesn't, but I can tell you one person, I'll just give him a shout out on here, because I don't think he'll care that I will tell him that he's amazing and has figured it out. Adam Connell. He runs a couple WordPress blogs. He does stuff on Pinterest, and he's figured it out as far as like WordPress goes. And I've tried to replicate his results and failed. So I wouldn't say like, don't not try a social network just because I haven't had success with it. I think there are people in every single niche, even Instagram. I know there's people killing it with WordPress niche. So I think, it's hard to figure out what works and what does work. Even Facebook and Twitter, it took me a couple of years to figure out like, hey, this works, this hasn't worked. There's nothing that's just like, this works 100% of the time. You kind of just have to start using it and trial and error kind of a thing.
So once you realized that Twitter was one of the best avenues for Kinsta, and as you said, it took you a couple of years to really identify how to use it to promote the company. What approach was that exactly? What did it involve in terms of the content of the tweets?
So a lot of our blog posts, if you go on there, they'll have like a little tweet box. So we spend like time trying to create these tweet boxes that have kind of like a clever share for the post, instead of just sharing the title of the post. Because to be honest, sometimes the title of blog posts are not that interesting. Try to come up with a clever way to tie in your content. Or like, here, I'll give you an example from last night. I shared it and it already has 11 retweets and 14 likes since last night, which might not be a lot for some people, but I mean, it's a good amount for just, I posted it at like 2 a.m. It was actually this morning because it was like at 2 a.m. It's already kind of gotten a little traction here. I said, just move one of my sites from .io address to a new shiny.com home tonight. And then I put like an emoji with sunglasses, smiley face. Here's the guide I use, fully updated. And I actually linked to one of our own, guides that we use at Kinsta for like moving domains across. That's something I was doing on my own time from my own sites. And I actually took the time at the same time to go update that article. Things like that, like, coming up with clever ways to share your content, not just hitting the tweet button, letting it go. And if you do that, you might not ever see anything. If you just do the standard approach of just sending it out there and hoping something's going to happen. I use 2 hashtags, always have. I feel that works the best. There's been case studies about this. It's crazy. Down to how many hashtags, but 2 is the magic number. If you want to skip the hard part, I would just start with 2. And then reaching out to people that you include in your blog post. The really good people doing stuff on Twitter are doing this, and I don't see a lot of people doing it. But like if you have a list post, like we do list posts, I'll take the time after we publish that to go reach out to the developers of, maybe we have like 10 plugins we shared. I go tweet them personally, so it's not public, but it's like they see it on their own feed, saying, hey, we just included you on this post, would love a share, like smiley face, kind of get creative with it. And, I'll probably get 3 or 4 shares of that. And most likely the developers of those plugins tend to have quite a good following already, because, they've been going for 5 years and have hundreds of thousands of installs. So they have a good social following. And, that right there, those 5 shares out of the 10 instantly generate traffic around that post and people retweeting stuff, and right there. So it's something free to do, and it takes like literally like 5 minutes. So I highly recommend like reach out to people you've mentioned. Like if you mention their article in your post, like let them know. Otherwise, they'll probably never see it. That's the thing. The last thing about Twitter, I've signed up creating conversations. And I know it's hard to say, like people always say like use Twitter as a way to, generate conversations and things with people. But it's really true. Like I've started conversations with people, and I've signed up enterprise clients at Kinsta that are paying us thousands of dollars, all from Twitter messages, like going back and forth. And they literally sign up after we've DM'd on Twitter, and I can see it go from my DM to Stripe sign up 5 minutes later. And it's crazy. And I've even met with amazing people in the WordPress ecosystem that we've just connected on Twitter. We DM and they come down to Scottsdale for like a WordCamp or something. And they tweet me and we hook up for coffee. And it all happened from Twitter, kind of an organic thing from Twitter, from tweets to DMs to getting to know each other a little bit and then ending up meeting each other in person. And then, after that, what you hope is, they become a customer of yours. And I've seen that happen as well after having coffee with people. And, a lot of times I'll start using their product, vice versa too, because once you start, conversing with people, it gives you a little more motivation to go check out kind of, what they're doing. Those are the kind of the different ways I use Twitter. It's worked wonders for us.
We've spoken about what works for you. In the last few years, are there any strategies you tried which didn't work that you think others who are starting out should avoid?
I can tell you, I haven't had much success lately. And I think because these networks are always changing, and I feel like some things I did with Twitter at the very beginning aren't working anymore. Like Twitter ads used to work a lot better for me. I used to kind of boost our new posts on Twitter. I do on Facebook now, but the Twitter ads aren't working as well. But what now works well, I feel, is Twitter remarketing. And if anyone's not familiar with remarketing, it's basically targeting people with ads that have already visited your site. You can Google remarketing and, find a tutorial about it. So we'll have clever things that show our tweets to people that have already hit our site once. That seems to work better for us nowadays on Twitter for ads rather than like lead generation ads or something. Yeah. So that's one thing I would say does not work for me anymore. I'm sure there's still people out there that have figured out how to make it work, but something I have not. I have failed at.
You mentioned paid marketing with Twitter and Facebook in particular. What's been your experience with Google as well? Do you use that?
We use AdWords now. We didn't used to because AdWords is just expensive. Like it's no way to get around it. It is expensive. And so when we first started out, we didn't do any AdWords marketing. I would say we didn't start AdWords till probably about a year ago. So we weren't doing AdWords for probably the first 2.5 years or so that I was at Kinsta at all, relying primarily on content marketing, social media marketing, and some Facebook social media ads. We didn't do AdWords at all. Now that we've grown, like we have a little more money for marketing budget than we, did when we first started. And so we've now started doing some AdWords, partially too, because we're trying to compete with, all these bigger guys in our space too. And AdWords, I can tell you right off the bat, AdWords works hands down. It's the best one out of any AdWords network, hands down. It beats Facebook, it beats Twitter. The bad thing is it's expensive. The good thing is you can start with a small budget and just test it for yourself to see, like, so you don't, blow through $1,000 overnight or something, which is very possible in some spaces. Set a small budget, see if you can figure out how to get the cost per click down and get it working. Because the thing with AdWords is because people go searching for the product to sign up for at that very moment. So like for us, people are going to search for what is the best WordPress host, or they go just search for WordPress hosting providers, or premium WordPress hosts. They want to sign up for a host right at that time when they go to Google. And so if they click on our ad, they're already past all the, hey, this is a cool article. Hey, I don't know these people who they already want this product. And so they're already going to be past all those beginning phases and be at the part where like, maybe they're going to bookmark our site at that moment. They're going to go check out 4 other competitors, make their decision and sign up. Their thought process is already very close to the purchasing decision at that point. And that's why AdWords it works so well. The bad thing is it's expensive even for us. Like I've worked really hard on getting our cost per click down and cost per acquisition. And it's still, if you compare it to our other platforms, like, oh my God, it makes me cringe because it's so expensive. But, in SEO, we look at SEO as it's not really free because you still got to put your time in and you still got to pay for if you're paying writers and stuff. But in a sense, SEO is way cheaper than AdWords. Definitely recommend AdWords if you can afford it. Or do AdWords once you can afford it. Like maybe you can at the beginning, but do it later down the road. Don't forget not to try it.
What's been your experience of, or have you promoted Kinsta using AdWords or other methods in different languages as well?
That's something I can tell you. So like we just started doing AdWords a year ago and it takes time because I have so many other things going on that it takes me time to test all these things nowadays. And so we just launched a French AdWords campaign like about a couple of weeks ago. I can't tell you if that works or not. The thing is, I can tell you from looking at the data that the cost per click is way lower. And because, primarily we're targeting the United States just because that's where a majority of our users are and customers are. The thing is, I actually think the bread and butter, I actually think is in the other countries, because the cost per click and the competition is way lower for AdWords. So I think, I can't say this for sure, but I think our costs will be a lot cheaper in these other markets just because of that. So I'm actually excited to go launch AdWords campaigns for all these other languages, because we do have our site in 12 different languages, and we have support, for our customers in Spanish, in French, in German, and we're launching more support languages too. So like, it's definitely an integral part of our process. The bad thing is, and the challenge I found there is, AdWords has specific character limits, for every line, like the header, the context line, everything. Problem is, I went to launch, I was like, okay, I'm going to launch a French campaign this weekend. I'm just going to bang it out really quick. And I learned that all the other languages are written way longer than English. And so I went to launch. I was like, our French guy gave me the translations. I was like, crap, this is not going to work because everything's way too long. So I had to go back to our French guy and be like, hey, we need to figure out how to trim down. The bad thing is, I had already optimized the ad text quite a bit to be like, hey, this works really well on the English side. So we had to figure out, like, how can we strip the French wording down to be a lot shorter, but not ruin all the messaging that I had done basically for the last 6 months. And he worked with me and we kind of figured out how to strip it down. But that's one piece of advice. If you do AdWords in different languages, be prepared that you can't just copy your English stuff to other languages, because the other languages are just written like, with 10 more words or something for the exact same thing.
You mentioned how the website itself is in 12 different languages. How long ago did you translate the website, and how has that affected your traffic and your conversions?
So we launched the Spanish site first, and that was in 2017. And then we slowly started launching sites after that, like one by one. So it's been like a gradual process. And we're actually just about to make the announcement pretty soon here about all 12 languages. They're actually already done, but we just haven't announced it yet. So we just finished the 12th, and I don't think we're going to do any more at this point. Like, we're just going to focus on these 12. But it has been a huge process, more work than we ever thought possible going into that. I'm sure doing the multilingual plugins and stuff, like how much work it is. But we took the approach of hiring people in-house. So like, basically our Spanish team is in-house. We now work with an in-house French guy. We have an in-house Italian guy. So these guys are actually part of the Kinsta team full-time. They not only do translating, but they also go to, word camps in France. They go to the word camps in Italy. So like, they're doing more than just translating for us now. They're really helping us fine-tune the communities for those languages, because it's something I can't do. Like, I can't read it. I can Google translate it, which is horrible because it's totally wrong. Or people will hate that in that language because it's, not right. So, but we do have other translators that we slowly move on to the team going forward. So like, we kind of outsource it until we can kind of get someone to come on full time. It has skyrocketed our traffic, I won't lie. And it's because we spend all the hard time doing the research up front on the English side. And so it does a lot of times replicate itself if we take the time to translate it for the other sites. So the one thing is, I would say there is focus on quality on the English side before you replicate it down the pipe. That's why it's so important. It's like, think of it like a funnel. Like, the best stuff should be on top, gets replicated down the pipe. I mean, it's 10 times our traffic basically. And I think it's only going to get more as we keep diving into these different regions. So it takes a lot of time, and I know a lot of companies or people can't do it. And I know that's kind of what your plugin is actually there for, to help. My advice to people is, use a plugin, like you guys have, or something that tries to speed up the time a little bit, because launching stuff multilingual is really, really important.
Actually, just on that, so you have 12 languages. How did you identify those 12?
Spanish was a mistake because we thought it would be the biggest one, just because, hey, everybody speaks Spanish after English. That's the second biggest language. But that was actually not correct for us. So we found our audience were better in the German, French, and like Nordic regions. So like Dutch, Swedish, all those regions. And we have a lot of customers in those regions. And so we found that those markets actually are doing a lot better than our Spanish market, even though Spanish does well. If we had to redo it, we would have launched German like probably first, and then probably French second, and then Italian. We probably would have launched Spanish like in the middle somewhere, not first, because we saw growth on the sites, even SEO on the other sites just skyrocket, and Spanish has just been kind of slowly growing. So Yeah, if I was piece of advice, I would say do more research than we did. Do research where your current customers are too. If we would have done that alone, like we would have been better off. And then, look at search volume for different popular terms in those regions too. So current customers, search volume, if you put those two together, that's probably a good starting point.
How did you manage to grow your newsletter to have 20,000 plus subscribers?
Obviously, if you keep growing your content and your traffic, you're going to get more subscribers. So that's one way. I mean, focus on trying to improve your SEO, improving your content, growing your traffic, because the subscription rates will just, keep slowly going up if you do that. But we've played with different kind of A/B testing the newsletter thing as well. And we just changed one thing that actually hurt us, and I'm actually going to go change it back. We were using Elegant Themes Bloom plugin, but there's hundreds of plugins out there that do this, but it's a newsletter subscription plugin. And we had it basically, so when you would scroll 50% of the way down an article, it would pop up from the bottom right and say, hey, do you want to join, the 20 other thousand marketers that are getting our blog post a week? And we have this little subscription box. So that's something that's worked really well for us, and kind of more minimal approach, I think, because it only showed if you had scrolled down. So why it worked, I think, well, was because I think people at that point, they're interested in the content. And so they're like, hey, this is good. And they're reading it. So they possibly want more, to hear from you more, basically. And then launching something I just did recently, I A/B tested and took that off. The problem is we have a sidebar CTA now that works really well, and we can't do both because it's too spammy. So I have to figure out a happy medium somehow. That's the tricky part. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. That's the tricky part to marketing. But the other thing that works really well for us that we just started is like an ebook or something. I wrote a book on how to speed up your WordPress site. It's a massive book, like 40,000 words, crazy huge. We turned it into an ebook. On our newsletter page, like you can sign up for free to get the ebook, and then you're on our newsletter. The great thing is they're on our newsletter, they're reading our ebook, which has a bunch of, mentions of Kinsta in it, obviously, because a lot of ways to speed up your WordPress site are something that we help with. So, there's possible ways they can convert from a newsletter, they can convert from our ebook. Yeah, that's another way to grow your newsletter, like an ebook. The thing I'm just now testing is actually launching a Facebook ad and doing it against our ebook landing page. So if you go to the footer of our website, we have like our newsletter landing page. And so doing like a Facebook ad, sending people directly to the newsletter landing page to get the free ebook, and seeing how many people sign up just to get the ebook. And then I don't know yet though how many people will just unsubscribe when they get that first newsletter. It's different, than if they're reading your content and, kind of they want more of it. But that's something I'm just now testing, is like the ebook. I know it works because you see thousands of people out there doing the same thing. I don't know how to fine tune it yet, I guess you could say. That's something I'm just now diving into. So
once you have these subscribers, what's your approach to emailing them? As in, how often do you do it, and how carefully do you think about content of each of the emails you send out?
Yeah, so I still do the newsletter myself, and we do it every Thursday at 9 a.m. That seems to work really good for us. I've tested different times. The bulk of our audience is in the US. Like, we want them to get it at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. And so that's something you definitely have to test for yourself. Like, where if you're in Europe, it's obviously going to be different times over there. Maybe it's the same over there, yeah, your time, but Thursday 9 a.m. your time. And the way to do that is just like, we use MailChimp, but like you can test different times and then just, do it for a month and watch the open rates and the click-through rates, and then see like, oh wow, the open rate was 10% more when I was doing Thursday at 9 a.m. than when I did Friday at 9 a.m. You can see like, hey, that works better than the other one. We pick 3 content pieces a week that we share with people that we've put out. And they're always try to be, the highest quality articles. We also share our knowledge-based articles. We have sometimes more content to pick from because we're pushing out blog posts and some knowledge-based posts, because we don't share just for like new users. We're also sharing a newsletter for our current users. So we do both. Yeah, just picking the best content that we've published the last period of time. We have a CTA at the bottom to kind of like, hey, if you want to migrate to Kinsta, you can do it for free. So that's in case people, new people that aren't Kinsta customers yet that are reading it, there's still like a place they can convert, kind of a thing. And then something we're just now testing recently, probably going to launch it this week actually, is we're trying to fine tune this process. And with MailChimp, you can do segmented groups, and we're going to actually like hide the CTA to migrate to Kinsta for the people that are already Kinsta customers. So then we're going to like show them something else, like a plugin of the week or something to those people. And then for non-Kinsta customers, we'll show them the CTA still. There's a lot of things you can do if you to start wanting to fine tune these processes. And that's kind of the point where we're at the process, just because we've been grinding for so long that now we're trying to go back and like, how can we optimize our current stuff to be even better for our users and convert even higher? And these are all things that I'm learning. I've never changed like blocks in MailChimp based on user segmented groups. So, these are all things that I like learning though. So it's a new thing for me.
Brian, once again, you've been more than generous with your time, and I appreciate all of the insight you've given us here. Just quickly, if anyone wants to read your content, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, our blog, kinsta.com. You can check out our blog there, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I pretty much live on Twitter, so it's at Brian Lee Jackson, it's BRIAN, Lee Jackson, and yeah, feel free to send me a tweet or connect with me. And again, I love starting conversations on there. You can, feel free to send me a DM or something.
Thank you very much, Brian, and enjoy the warm weather in Arizona.
Okay, yeah. You too. Enjoy the humidity, I guess. Right?
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Okay, yeah. Bye.
Thank you to my guest, Brian Jackson. You can find him on Twitter at Brian Lee Jackson. And don't forget to check out Kinsta.com if you're looking for a premium WordPress hosting solution. If you want to learn more from the leading experts in WordPress about how you can make your business a success, hit the subscribe button now. I'm Joe Lobo, and I'll see you next time.